Welcome to the extension of the Coach Up podcast here on my new YouTube channel, The Connection Collaboration Space. I'm very excited to welcome you, Loretta, to be with me today because we are talking things in real estate, but from a different perspective than what you guys have been hearing. And so, Loretta, please introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Loretta Wolff. I am a real estate broker. My company is Next Level Real Estate. We are licensed in New York and Pennsylvania right now. And we cover pretty much the Hudson Valley down to Long Island, as well as the Poconos. A lot of people talk about the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and up further north. So that's pretty much the area that we cater to. We're very well versed in the investment space, seeing as though a lot of our markets are not just second home markets, but commercial properties. So it's a little bit of both. And I have been in real estate for 6 years. So I came along pre-COVID. So I've been doing this. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you COVID, you've been there and things just work. And then
Right.
no, I had to work them before. So I was here before COVID. And you'll see the dog in the background.
We always welcome extra guests. We do.
Yes.
So you haven't been in real estate though long. 6 years is still fairly new, I
Mhm.
think, in the industry. But you have some experience, as you just mentioned, that we're going to talk about specifically is in the investment side. And so you guys, we've been talking real estate this month, and there have been on the podcast different real estate gurus. And so you all get it from all aspects. But investing, and especially from the perspective of a realtor and that investment side is something that I'm very excited for us to talk about. And so, one, let's kick off, Loretta. So there's been some changes. So
Yes.
this is September 2024.
Yep.
There have been some changes in the real estate market when it comes to realtors, how you all are able to operate, and that has impacted some things. So, real quick, tell us what the changes are, just so we're all
Okay.
on the
So
same page.
basically the changes are you have to hire a buyer agent if you want your own representation. So there's always two sides of a transaction. There's a seller side and a buyer side. And most of the time, um, in New York, I know in different states, you can't be on both sides. So some states, it's illegal, like Florida. I know it's illegal to be on both sides of the deal. There's no such thing as what's called dual agency. However, in my markets, it is something that is allowed. Now, there is a seller side. So the seller hires an agent to list their property and sell their property, market their property. And then there's a buyer agent. Now, the buyer agent is there to help buyers navigate through showings and documents and inspections and all of those things. Um, Commissions have always been negotiable. So we've always been able to negotiate commissions. I just have to be 100% clear on that. We have always been able to negotiate commissions. Um, in the conversation I have with my sellers is how do we want to compensate buyer agents? So it's a conversation that the sellers are aware of during their listing presentations. Now, during buyer consultations, buyers are hearing the same conversation. It's how are we going to get paid as your agent? Sometimes by the seller, but also we need to make sure that we're getting paid by you because we don't work for free. And so there was a whole big lawsuit that happened, and I'm sure you can see it all over the news. I don't want to get into too much detail with that, but now we have to have a conversation. We can't just go and open a door very quickly for agents. We have to, especially if we're working on behalf of the buyer, we need to make sure that we're having conversation with the seller's agent in knowing where that compensation is coming from. Is it coming from the seller? Is the buyer able to pay for that? Another thing that we're running into is I work very closely with my lending partners to say, hey, is this something that we're going to run into an issue down the future? Do they have the money if we need to get a little creative with our financing and our offers? What do we need to do? So it's having those conversations. So you're not calling up an agent saying, hey, I want to see this house anymore. It's you're calling up the agent, then they have to do the work and the research and all of that. So it's really making a lot of people who are just tire kickers looking around being nosy neighbors to kind of be out of it because they're not necessarily just being able to go in and see a house just because they want to see a house.
Mm,
These are real buyers who are pre-approved or pre-qualified by an actual lender. You know, you have to know. I think the biggest struggle was that people didn't know if they were really qualified or not.
right. Hmm.
So so working with the lenders and building those lending partnerships with my lenders has really made a difference in being a team. We're a team. We're not just a transactional agent, you know, like we're all in this together. We all want to see your deal go through. How can we best do this for? So
I think that part that you talk about, people have to be qualified. So you have to, it goes along with as business owners when you're even looking for customers. People want to help everybody, but if people can't afford your help, then you can't work with everybody, right? In order for
right.
you to stay in business. And so it's the same thing, making sure that now people are actually getting qualified before they're spending or wasting, attempting to waste anybody's time, an agent's time to help them. So from an investment standpoint, how does this impact people who may be looking to invest in real estate? And it's a,
So I mean, it doesn't necessarily impact people in such a way that, like, watch out, alarm, alarm, you know? It's definitely one of those situations where you have to know the loan type you're going for, just like with anything. Like, it's our job to negotiate on your behalf, right? So even if you hire me as because you're investing in something, it's still the same as if someone is buying a home, right? They're still investing. But when you're looking at, like, let's say you're looking to purchase a multifamily where it just has a couple units, that might look a little different because I have to know what financing program you have. So our offer and our deal is solid when we put it in. You know, it really makes a difference knowing that I mean, there are different options out there. You can get commercial loans, you can get what's called a DSCR loan, and there are different loan types. I'm not a mortgage person. I don't pretend to be a mortgage person, but I am an investor. So I can speak a little bit to this. I've purchased multiple properties myself. And I've done hard money loans, which are high interest, somebody who just has extra cash, and usually you pay interest for the length of the loan, and then it's a balloon payment at the end, but you're paying high interest. I mean, some of the loans that I've seen are 12, 13%, like super high, but they don't look at a lot of stuff. They know that you can make the payment, right? You might have a credit pull, you might have, you know, promise of income from your business or something like that that they can see. Um, they're a little bit more freeing, I guess, is what you can say. There are different types of hard money loans, whether you could do a renovation loan or not. I've done both to where one property needed renovation, one property didn't. So it's, and then knowing you're out, right? So if you start with hard money to get in the door, then what are you doing as an investor? Are you looking to hold it and collect rent? Is it a renovation project that you're looking to fix and flip it? So those are all what you have to know and what you should be discussing with your agent in the beginning.
mm,
If you're looking for a multifamily where you're going to live in one of the units and rent out the other three, that might look a little bit different than someone who's buying a single family fix and flip and they just want out at the end. So knowing what your exit or hold strategy is will make a huge difference in how your agent is able to find the stuff, because you don't want to overpay for something. If it's a renovation, you got to get it for low because you're going to fix it and sell it for high. So having these conversations is really important with your agent upfront.
that's really good to know that your agent needs to be aware of what you're going to do with the property, because
Mhm.
that's something previously I wouldn't have thought of. I would think I'm purchasing the property. All I need my agent to do is to make sure that they can get me the best deal possible. But that's really helpful to know that including them in the conversation about this is the reason and what I'm planning to do, they may bring expertise about this is the better option to look into or direction you may want to consider, so that you have more wise counsel who's helping you
Right.
with that. You mentioned DRS, I think.
DSCR. So it's a debt service ratio loan. And what that is that is if you're going to hold the property and you're going to rent it out, it goes based on what the rents are, the rent potential is. So you don't necessarily need, it's not what's called a full document loan where they look at your entire background. We're like, I know that you own a coaching business. You're your own business, right? You don't have employees. You're not an employee. So those kind of things, how do you show documents to buy a house when your accountant is working in your best interest to maximize your tax benefits, right?
Mhm.
So this is one of those loans where, again, I'm going to stay in my lane because I'm not a mortgage broker, but it goes based on the potential, the rent potential that you can make from that property. So there are some things, if it's a short-term rental or long-term rental, even midterm rentals, they are going to ask us as agents for additional information as well. So I've done a couple loans with some of my investor partners who we went on rents because that's what they were going to do with it. And they wound up, the lender was able to get them a better rate and a better deal by moving them from a second home to a DSCR loan. So that kind of loan helped her. Not that she needed it per se, but she was able to maximize. It was less money down for her that she had to put down. It was the best product for her.
Mhm.
And that's why working with a good lender who is listening to what it is you're going to do really makes a difference.
And you often can find a good lender when you find a good agent.
Absolutely, because we're
Yeah.
like connected at the hip.
Correct. Okay, so as we're talking about this investment and the value that the agents bring, it helps me to put into perspective now why that negotiation conversation about payment for the buyer's agent upfront is so important, right? And also it helps to solidify the work they do because sometimes we could have thought all you do is you put some numbers
Yeah,
into a system and you figure out where some houses are and then I have to drive there myself, even though I'm meeting you, and then that's it. But
yeah,
this really opens up the understanding of there's a lot more. And I know that there's more because when you and I talked, we also talked about end of the year coming up. If people have maybe some additional income that they have or some profits and you're looking to maximize your tax strategy, that end of year investment may have some potential to be helpful.
yes,
And so,
yes.
yeah, talk about that.
So right now, the I'm seeing is we're at year end. And so I'm getting a lot of phone calls from people saying, "Hey, my accountant said I need to spend some money." So, and I have this much to spend. And investing in real estate gives me tax benefits. So let's find something. Can we close it by the end of the year? And the answer is yes. We can still close it by the end of the year. We can still work to do it. If you have the cash available and you don't need financing, that's a totally different story. However, most people who are investors like to use the bank's money anyway, use other people's money, right? And then so they'll use that as like down payment and then, maybe they come up with a little bit less that they have to, finance or something like that. So it's really when you're thinking about investing, there's nothing wrong with having a conversation with an agent and saying, "Hey, what are your thoughts?" My first thing to say to you would be, "What does your accountant think? And have you been pre-qualified?" Like, do we need to spend this money now and close by the end of the year? Like, time frame. I need to know your time frame. And how are we financing the deal? Because once we know that, then we can move accordingly. I don't want to be jamming properties down your throat and you'd be like, "Whoa, he said January, calm down."
Right. Right.
you know, like that's not who I am. But I'm here in as an investor myself. I know that sometimes deals get hung up on certain things, whether it's the appraisal or things like that. So the earlier towards the end of the year that you start, the better because it makes it that much easier for then you don't get flustered because you're trying to get money together and run your business at the same time. And you're not getting flustered with me because I'm not sending you things fast enough, or the lender's not getting back to us to order the appraisal so it's not meant to be stressful.
Mhm.
We can only move the mountains that we come up to, not necessarily the ones behind.
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. I think it's so interesting that you just said some people may be in the situation where their accountant is telling them at the end of the year, for tax purposes, you need to spend some money. And I have had, Loretta, I have had so many conversations with different CPAs and tax preparers about why that makes sense, why that doesn't make sense, to listen to that CPA person, not listen to that, all sorts of them. But one
Mhm.
thing that this conversation, if you are making that type of money and your tax preparer or your CPA says spend some money, the difference in this, Loretta, is we're talking about buying real estate, which twofold gives you tax benefits and is an asset.
It's an asset.
Unfortunately,
Yes.
too many people hear the you need to spend some money at the end of the year to maximize your expenses to lower your tax bill when they're not encouraging them to buy assets. You're just buying stuff
Like a
and
car.
like a car, which makes no sense. And so this is, I'm so glad that you guys are hearing if you're going to spend the money to get tax benefits, be smart because it's not just spending money, it's
Mhm.
investing. In this case, investing in a place that gives you tax shelters
Yeah,
and is an asset that will produce more money for you.
absolutely.
That's just what I
Absolutely.
think. Yeah.
And the other thing too is that if you position yourself in such a way, it could be that all of the rents or whatever money you're making is paying the mortgage. So it's really not doing anything except getting you tax benefits. There's no loss, right? So like that's why the conversation needs to happen with somebody that you know and trust, and I say call me because I'm an investor too.
Mhm.
Like I've done this too. I'm not just saying this because I have customers that I've helped and clients that I've helped. I living, breathing, done this too.
It makes a difference.
It does. It really
Yeah.
does. Because you know what? You can only learn from people who've been there.
Well, correct. Because you eventually, those who have not, who are teaching, you eventually get to a point where you realize, I don't
Oops.
know that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So the fact that you are an investor is so cool. And so you see both sides, all sides of the transaction.
Mhm.
You're a buyer, you've been a seller, I'm sure, and you're an investor and you're an agent who helps facilitate all of that. So I think it's really cool the bird's eye as well as the in the forest and the trees perspective you have. So I want to pull a little bit on that realtor knowledge as well,
Okay. Sure.
because the other thing we talked about when it comes to investing is investing internationally. And you had
Mhm.
mentioned this, and my ears perked up
I
because
know you heard international and you're like,
right,
beaches and all the
all the
things.
things, and
All the things.
also unfortunately, but intelligently, I think so many other places are less expensive
Mhm.
to invest in
Mhm.
versus right from a US dollar standpoint. And
Yes.
so introduce me a little bit to
Okay.
why someone might want to invest internationally and then how they even get started.
Okay. So investing internationally looks very different.
Okay.
It's very different. The rules are different. Even I'm talking the rules are different everywhere nationwide, right? Like USA kind of thing. Rules are different in every state.
Mhm.
Um, you have some areas of New York that write their own contracts and the attorney reviews them. And then you have some places in New York where attorneys write the contracts. In Pennsylvania, I write my own contracts and title closes. So there's different rules in different states, right? So across the 50, different, totally.
Mhm.
Um, Now when you start to go like Puerto Rico, US Virgin Islands, still US but not US kind of thing, totally different again. Their lending products are different. Their procedures are different. They call things differently, obviously, because there might be language differences and stuff like that. So knowing the language helps. Always, always, always get an attorney. to cover you, just to make sure that the documents are in order properly. So that might be an extra slight investment that would be worth it in the long run, because as an agent in New York and Pennsylvania, their rules are totally different.
Mhm. So an
Mm.
attorney in that state or country, well, in that
Yes.
country.
In that, yeah. Yep. Now, if you're going abroad, right? Like let's say Europe or Africa or Australia, those are different as well. However, me being a realtor, I have access to a network of international realtors that I can refer people to in those other countries who can help navigate the systems. I can't pretend to know everything everywhere. I would love to. But we would be on vacation on a beach having this podcast together. um, but um, everything is so different. Each country is different. Each province in the country is different. Every firm believer in staying in my lane. I know I've mentioned that a couple times, but I do have partners in other areas that will gladly take a referral that I can know that I'm handing you off to somebody who knows what they're doing, knows that they're going to guide you as if I was there. And if they have any questions, they are more than welcome to come to me at any point. When investing abroad, it is very important to know your purpose and why you're investing,
Hmm. What do you mean?
even more so than here. Are you renting it? Are you Airbnb-ing it? Where are you looking? If you're looking to Airbnb, is it a populated area? Is it close to a city? Do you know the topography? All of these, have you physically gone there to look at properties? Are you doing everything via Zoom with the agent? Have you ever been to that country before that you know what area you want to be in? What about safety? What does that look like? So those are things that when you're investing internationally, who's going to be your boots on the ground when you're here in the States over there? And so building a team over there is just as important as when you're building and investing here.
Hmm.
You have to know and trust the people that you're dealing with. Now, that being said, we talked about buyer agency. You don't have to marry the first buyer agent that you come across, right? Interview your agents
Hmm.
just like you would anybody else. You want to make sure with any purchase, investment, it's your house, you're going to live there, whatever the case may be, you really want to make sure that you gel well with them, because it's going to be a long haul. And you want to get in a fight with your agent in the middle of everything that's stressing you out. You know, it's funny because everybody, you are like, oh, agents do so much more. I'm also a psychologist when you're flying off the handle because you're overwhelmed, right? Like these are things that you come to me screaming and crying or whatever because something you're just overwhelmed by all the paperwork or the dog ran away or something, like, and you have nobody to listen. And so your buyer agent is there for that, but understand that you have to gel well with them because you don't want to be fighting against them. You want to be fighting with them like a united front.
Hmm.
That's important. So it's okay to interview somebody and say, I would like to interview you to be my buyer agent. Great. When do you want to set up a Zoom call, or do you want to meet for coffee? Whatever the case may be. Let's have that conversation. You could see what I offer. You could see what we can talk about our compensation and what we would do. And then we can go from there. It's not unheard of. Just like if you were selling, you're going to talk to a bunch of agents. Why wouldn't you do that on the buy side?
Hmm. Such a good point. So from the buy side, when it comes to, okay, before I get to that, because okay, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
One more question on the international investing. But it really does, it affects the buyer's agent. Do you have the similar, since things are so different investing internationally, as you said, in the 50 states, things are different when it comes
Mhm.
to how real estate transactions are done. Can there be the same expectation with the buyer's agent? So the changes that have just happened here in the US, do those they don't apply. Of course, it's not the US internationally, but how do buyer's agents work internationally? Yeah.
That's a fair question that I honestly can't answer because I know that buyer agents do not exist in Puerto Rico, and that's the United States, technically. So
What?
I would love to tell you, that I could say you have a buyer's agent. I can look it up and see based on your area of where you're looking. However, I can tell you in Puerto Rico, there are no such thing as buyer agents.
Oh,
You deal
wow.
with the seller. So there's no representation for the buyer.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna delve a little bit then into
Okay.
into what agents do, right? And this goes along. I think this will be helpful because for any of you all who are investing in real estate, like, do you need an agent? Do you not? And if you do, what do they need to do what are you interviewing them to do for you?
Mhm,
So if there are countries where you don't have a buyer's agent, and so there's
mhm.
no representation, Loretta, because we're so accustomed to it in the United States, right? Like things
Right,
are as they are, so you accept them and think this is just the norm.
right.
But then now the question is beget of, well, if I don't have representation, how do I know what forms I need to be signing? How do I know if I'm not being taken advantage of? What?
Attorney,
I don't.
an attorney.
Okay.
Or they have me on speed dial. So I've helped a couple people and they're like, Loretta, is this normal? And I go, based on what I'm seeing, I don't see that there's buyer agents. So I would recommend that you talk to either the title company or an attorney, whoever is going to work in your best interest. Because if there's a contract written by an attorney, it would be an assumption that you too would get an attorney and it would be separate from the person that they used. And then they would have your best interest in that.
Okay.
And they would look over the contract, review the contract, and make sure that it's okay for you too,
Mm,
right? Like it's fair.
yeah. I could see that even now with the new change. I, sh- I shouldn't say new change, but it is a new change because,
Mhm,
but to your point in the US, agent commissions have been negotiable the whole time.
mhm,
It's just, how we maybe had it presented before or we received it. It probably was presented correctly and we just heard what we wanted to hear as
mhm.
buyers, right? And so ma- talk to me about how buyers agents now are able to, how are they struggling or how are they thriving with the new process of pitching their services, negotiating for their services? Because I could see a buyer saying, well, I just need an attorney. So why do I need you?
So that is something that has come up. Why do I need a buyer's agent? I'll just go to the seller's agent.
Yeah,
I'll just go to the listing agent and tell them I want to buy the house. Why do I need a buyer's agent? Um, and so if you don't mind, I'd like to discuss that first
go ahead.
because as a seller's agent, when you sign a listing agreement with an agent as a seller, because you're selling the property, they represent you as well as everybody in that brokerage. So everybody in that brokerage represents you as the seller. They have your best interest in mind, and they are going to get you top dollar for your home. That is what the listing agreement says. Is that we're going to work to get top dollar. Everybody in the office represents the seller. Back in the 90s, buyer agency became a thing because buyers felt that they weren't getting represented.
This is
They weren't
new.
being represented. So buyer agency is something that's relatively new.
Wow.
And it came because buyers were not being represented fairly and they were felt that they were not being negotiated in their best interest. So that happened. And then this everything how it worked before that was everybody who showed the property because the multiple listing service has been around for a while, even if they were from another brokerage, if you showed the property you were still in the best interest of the seller, not your buyer. You were what was considered a subagent and you were working on behalf of the brokerage to sell that property for their seller. Then buyer agency became a thing and they got to pick. Do you want a different agent for the buyer side? Now, what a buyer agent does is a lot more than just opening doors and driving around. It's negotiating. It's making sure that your paperwork is proper. Like in Pennsylvania, I have to make sure all the documents are filled out properly. All of your disclosures, all of your everything, lead-based paint, fair housing disclosure, agency disclosure, making sure you understand all of the paperwork and what that looks like. It's also working on the back end with the lender to make sure they have all the paperwork they need. It's working with the title company or the attorney or both in some situations, if you're in that, working with them to make sure that they get all their information that they need in a timely manner. The attorney will order title or orders title of municipals to do a municipal search and make sure everything is there. I take you back there for an inspection, which is probably 2 to 4 hours, depending on your inspector. So I sit there for another 2 to 4 hours during that time, making sure you're asking the right questions of the inspector and knowing what you're buying. Sometimes I have to go back for an appraiser. A lot of times the selling agent does, but sometimes I have to go back and let them in. I go through a walkthrough with you and make sure that nothing was different than what we saw during the inspection. I make sure that all of your ducks are in a row, all your documents, everybody's all good to go. There's a lot of documents on the buy side. So I make sure that everything is where it needs to be before you do the final walkthrough. And we sit at the closing table together and close your sale. I'm there to answer any questions. I just got 3 text messages from a client who is in the middle of buying and we're getting ready to close. And she's like, am I supposed to sign this? Yeah, you're supposed to sign it. Your bank sent it to you. Yeah, so you should sign that. That's good. Sign that. But it's just, I'm your moral support cheerleader. There are times I'm also your psychologist because I don't give medication, but I hear all of the stress of the problems and everything.
Right.
If anything comes back from the inspection, negotiating that on your best interest and getting you money off if it's a high priced item. Searching for houses. It's not just setting you up in a search. It's searching for houses, setting up all the appointments for those searches for the houses, driving to those houses, letting you in all of those houses, answering any questions for those houses. There's sometimes I do video tours with people because they're not in the area and they're looking to buy. There's sometimes it's a 2-hour away drive for me and I'm driving 2 hours for you to look multiple times at multiple different houses, so sometimes when people see a paycheck that's a lump sum, they don't realize all the little things that we have to do on the back end. And once you know that a buyer's agent is just so much more than opening doors, I think people will understand that it's just as respectable as being a seller's agent.
Definitely sounds like it's a lot of time invested. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it's less than minimum wage.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
no. Okay.
Sometimes when you look at the length of a deal and how long. See, but that's what people forget. Like sometimes, like I have a deal that's been going on for like 6 months. And I still have to go through the emails and check things and do that kind of stuff. So I'm still working and I'm through that money already.
Gotcha.
So people see the lump sum and they're like, oh my gosh, you make, let's take out everything that I've done for this one deal and you'll see that I basically worked for free.
Whew. Okay. Yes. You wouldn't work for this dollar amount, right?
No.
Okay. So in that case, buyer's agents need to be upfront and confident in their negotiation for their compensation.
Absolutely. And what I'm seeing is there's a lot of talk with people who are not confident in their conversations. And that's where the struggle is. It's not necessarily like, in my mind, we should have been having this and many of us did. We were trained to have these conversations. So this is not new for a lot of us. This is new for the people who were like, oh, you're making money during COVID. let's jump on the bandwagon. And then they're realizing, it's not what you think. So there are people who are struggling to have those conversations. But I know as a broker, and for my team, we've had a lot of trainings on how to have these conversations, and we've done a lot of role playing. And I think in having a broker that supports you as an agent is a huge deal as well, because that training is integral, especially during this time.
Yeah. Loretta, we've covered a lot of ground in our time together. If there were two things that you would want to leave with individuals who are business owners
Mhm.
um, around the topic of real estate, what would be the two things you would want them to know?
If you want to invest, there are ways to do it as a business owner. You don't have to be a W employee to do it. And build your team, because they're the ones that are going to help in all areas make it a lot easier for you to invest and enjoy it, because it can be very enjoyable.
Can you list the team? When you say team, so people know what you're talking about, can you just real quick list off the people
Sure.
who would be in that team?
Yeah. So your real estate agent, your lender, if you're going and partnering with somebody, you guys need to be on the same page. So we're not looking in opposite directions, because we'll get nowhere fast.
Mhm.
If you're in an attorney state, you're going to need an attorney. You will need a title company. And a lot of those kind of things can come from your agent when you find your agent. But your trifecta would be, it's you, your agent, and your lender. Those are your most important people. Everybody else can be a recommendation once you get that team and you find the property. You're going to need inspectors and those kind of things. That is after you find the property that you're looking for. It's really important to get the before. Your lender, your agent, and you all need to be on the same page.
Love it. I love how what a large gamut of information we have talked about today.
Mhm.
And so, but it's been so widespread that you guys didn't get a lot of depth, which is why Loretta's going to tell you how you can connect with her and reach out to her if you have questions. So, Loretta,
Sure.
please tell people.
Sure. You could find me on, so it's at NEXLVLRE. So I kept the name the same across all social: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on TikTok as well. You're more than welcome to text. I have my office number is textable, so that's 845-280-5931. I do have an app. So that's for people who are looking in New York and Pennsylvania. It's part of those MLSs, it pulls them in. So it's Next Level, NEXLVL, Next Level Real Estate if you're in your app or your Play Store, or it's just Loretta at nextlevelrealestate.com.
Easy enough. Thank you for
Welcome.
the enlightening information today.
Thank you for having me.